New details on the investigation into the shooting death of a young OPP officer near Brantford.
Constable Perchetta was only 28 years old and had just been informed yesterday that he had completed his probationary period with the Ontario Provincial Police.
We'll have more on how the officer is being remembered and the latest on the two people now charged with his murder. Plus,
I was maybe the last person who spoke with him, and I remember him smiling, but he also looked exhausted.
a young woman makes a painful journey from Mexico to Toronto to collect her father's remains after the migrant worker died from COVID. And
it isn't the police alone, but it is the police as one of the groups that helps keep the community safe and stable.
Increasing the police budget will be on Mayor John Tory's agenda next year. The mayor talks to CBC Toronto about what's ahead for the city in 2023. Police are sharing new details tonight about the circumstances that led to Constable Greg Perchella's death. The officer was shot and killed in the line of duty yesterday near Brantford. Tyler Cheese has the latest.
Provincial Constable Greg Perchella responded to a call for a vehicle in the ditch just outside Hagersville, Ontario yesterday afternoon. Soon after, the 28-year-old was shot and then rushed to a local hospital where he was pronounced dead. The OPP held a press conference earlier tonight revealing more details about the incident.
I can tell you that the officer was essentially ambushed and stood absolutely no chance of being able to defend himself. The motives behind that, the circumstances, the timing of which are all part of the active ongoing investigation.
Do you know if he fired any shots himself?
He did not discharge his firearm.
One of the accused, 25-year-old Randall McKenzie, was out on bail from a prior offense that involved assaulting a police officer. McKenzie and 30-year-old Brandy Stewart Sperry were both formally charged with first-degree murder in court earlier today.
Yes, they do flee the scene. They steal another vehicle by way of robbery. They flee the scene in that vehicle. They are then located by police, tracked, and apprehended.
No further details have been released about the driver of the stolen vehicle. As the year comes to a close, many are reflecting on a difficult year for Ontario's policing community.
Tragically, since September of this year, Greg is the fourth police officer in Ontario to be shot and killed while serving and protecting his community here in the province of Ontario.
On September 12th, Toronto Police Constable Andrew Hong died after he was shot during his lunch break at a Tim Hortons in Mississauga. Police described the incident as an unprovoked and deadly ambush. 2 days later, York Police Constable Travis Gillespie was killed while driving into work around 6 a.m. in Markham. His vehicle was struck by an alleged impaired driver. The next incident took place in October. 2 South Simcoe officers died while responding to a disturbance at a home. Constable Devin Northrup worked with the service for 6 years, and Constable Morgan Russell was a 33-year veteran with the service. OPP say they will be supporting Perchella's family during this difficult time.
Our hearts go out to them, we mourn with them, and we will be alongside them throughout the journey that they have to face as we first start to plan for a funeral. And information of the funeral will be shared in the coming days.
Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Constable Perchella grew up in Barrie, where he excelled at sports and was seen as a natural leader. We're also hearing he knew from a young age that he wanted to be a police officer. Dale Manukduk spoke to some people who knew him about how he's being remembered.
Before Greg Perchella was an OPP officer, he was a Lion at York University and a Knight at St. Joan of Arc in Barrie. These were the hallways he roamed, making an impact on those around him.
He made you want to be better and do better because he had that light to him where his faith and his spirit was just all-encompassing it, and you couldn't avoid it, like his smile and his hugs.
Perchella was a founding member of the school wrestling team and former Student Athlete of the Year, someone that his coach says you could build around.
His leadership and his exemplary behavior and his role model and his personality made it okay. Like, oh, if Greg can wrestle, then yeah, I guess it's okay to wrestle.
Perchella was very involved in both the wrestling and martial arts scenes. He started training here just over 2 years ago. Many of the people in this photo were training last night when their phones started to buzz.
It hit us all very hard. We were all in shock. And then at that point, we started realizing that it actually was him. Was always very, very calm when he trained, and was always very positive and always wanting to help and give back and support others. Was a true gentleman.
Those who knew Pershala say he always knew what he wanted and went after it.
He had served with us as a special constable at Queen's Park prior to becoming a provincial constable. He was a member of the Canadian Armed Forces. This is a man who at 5 years old decided he wanted to be a police officer.
Pershala just passed his OPP probation period, and yesterday, when he was shot and killed, was the first day he was patrolling on his own. And while his death is hard to process for the people who knew him, they say at least he got to live out his dreams. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Barrie.
A young woman from Mexico has spent the past month retracing some of her father's steps, learning about his life here in Toronto. He was a migrant worker who died from COVID, and she's here to take back his remains. Lorenda Redekop has more on her journey.
This was Salomon Lazaro's last Christmas with family in Mexico. Here, dancing with his granddaughter. Before he left for Canada in 2018, he always stayed close with family through photos and videos.
Preciosa. Quedó blanca, blanca.
Often telling them how much he loved the snow.
He always wanted me to explore, not to limit myself, to see places and be curious.
Now, because of him, his daughter Vianette is doing that, trying to see the city through her father's eyes. He worked in construction as an undocumented migrant, supporting family back home, living in a house with around 15 people. But in spring 2021, he contracted COVID, not yet able to be vaccinated. He died in May of that year.
I was maybe the last person who spoke with him, and I remember him smiling, but he also looked exhausted, tired, and he said, "I'm fine. Take care of your mother. Take care of your siblings. I love you."
Recently, a service for her father was held at San Lorenzo Anglican Church. She carried the ashes on the Mexican flag.
I'd already cried. I'd already suffered his loss, but coming here, I reconnect so much. Maybe I wasn't there in his last days, but I try to see where he lived, the people he met, and I see that he's left behind something good. That comforts me a lot.
At that Spanish-speaking church, the remains of 3 other people who also died of COVID are still there. Their loved ones still not able to come here.
We have many Latin American immigrants who died with no families. I personally had the opportunity to bury around 129 people, the 100% of Latinos, probably around 70% with no status.
He hopes those in power take lessons from all this tragedy.
An urgent moment: food, education, affordable housing, health. It's really a mandate for every government.
Vianette Lazaro says it's hard for her family not to have a body to bury, but it helps to have her father's remains and to be able to return them home to Mexico, to bring them healing and closure so long after his death. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Turning now to some health news. Starting in the new year, you'll be able to visit a pharmacy to get treatment for some common ailments. The Ontario government says people will be able to stop in at pharmacies across the province to receive prescriptions for 13 common issues. They include hay fever, pink eye, menstrual cramps, and cold sores. Health Minister Sylvia Jones says giving pharmacists the ability to provide the prescriptions allows for easier and more convenient access to health care. Across Ontario, most hydro customers have now had power restored following last week's massive snowstorm, but some regions are still struggling in the aftermath. In Fort Erie and Port Colborne, close to 700 customers are still without power. Meanwhile, Hydro One is reporting some new outages in central Ontario because of heavy wet snow now falling in the region. Dahlia Ashry joins us now for a first look at the forecast, and here it was feeling quite mild compared to the last few days.
That's right, Talia. Not such a bad day today. It was a dry one, but also a warm one as well. And we're going to continue to see those warm temperatures trending over the next few days, but we're also going to see a damp week ahead. The daytime high in Toronto today, 4 degrees. Speaking about those above seasonal temperatures, usually today would have been -1, and today was 4 degrees. A little cooler out in Ottawa, 0 degrees. It's starting to feel, I don't know, this week it's feeling more like fall than it is winter. For whatever reason, Mother Nature's playing tricks on us. We're going to take a close look here and see what we can expect over the next few days. We're talking about a damp week ahead. No watches and warnings. It was really going to start around Thursday. We're going to see that cloud coverage. We're going to have some drizzle tomorrow, so you don't really need your umbrella for tomorrow. Maybe a raincoat, but then we're going to see that rain really kicking in and carrying through starting on Friday and carrying through all the way through the weekend. So a new year starting it off on a damp one. And then tonight temperatures will drop to 0 degrees. Tomorrow 8 degrees for the daytime high and a little bit of drizzle on the way.
Thanks, Dahlia. John Tory says increasing Toronto's police budget will be a priority in the year ahead. It's one of a number of commitments Tory made during a year-end interview with CBC Toronto. Municipal Affairs reporter Sean Jeffords sat down with the mayor to talk about what's ahead for the city in 2023.
John, good. How are you?
I'm fine.
As John Tory begins his final term as mayor of Toronto, he outlined his agenda in a year-end interview. The mayor says amongst the first tasks he'll deal with in 2023 will be the city's police budget.
Why do the police need an increase now?
I think this year, with inflation running higher, but in particular with some, fraying at the edges with respect to community safety, that it is appropriate that we look at giving with the limited funds we have. And I said yesterday it would be done responsibly and it would be done within our limited means, but I will be likely proposing something that fits those things, responsible and within our limited means, but will represent an increase in the police budget. And why? Because I think some of the things we're seeing out there, contributed to by mental health, which we spoke about earlier, but otherwise also just general, kind of levels of upset in some parts of the city, require that the police have more resources to deal with, and it isn't the police alone, but it is the police as one of the groups that helps keep the community safe and stable.
Tory also spoke about the expanded strong mayor powers granted to him by Premier Doug Ford. He supports the province conducting a review of the controversial new system, which critics have slammed as anti-democratic.
I just think it is prudent and sensible and fair to take a provision like this that is unusual relative to other kinds of legislative provisions and to review it, before the time of the next municipal election and provincial election, so that if it needs to be changed and that's the result of the review, then it can be changed.
Those powers give Tory the ability to pass some bylaws with a minority of support from council. Councillors asked the province earlier this month to repeal the bill granting Tory the powers, and the province has shown no indication that it will grant that request. The mayor says the debate is over.
If they want to carry on the debate and have it, as you say, take a toll by interfering with the orderly carrying on of business and the collaborative and collegial carrying on of business, they can do that. But I think that the voters will not judge that well. I think the voters say you had the debate, you had the votes, you said what you had to say, get on with getting the job done that you were elected to do, and I think they're perfectly within their rights to say just that.
On the city's need for more housing, Tory says people won't have to wait long to begin to see results.
We hadn't waited around for the current phase of provincial target setting and so on to start. We have the housing now, which has thousands of units in the development pipeline. We have Open Doors, which has thousands of units in the pipeline. We have a lot of efforts that we're undertaking on supportive housing, thousands of units. So people are already seeing them. There are 3,000 units by the end of this year that will be available for people to live in supportive housing that didn't exist 16 months ago. And so we're not waiting.
As Tory thinks about the legacy he'll leave behind, he says improving the supply of housing and increasing access to public transit are top of mind.
I want to get the housing built, get the transit built, keep the finances in good order, get the parks, the new parks built, support arts and culture, make sure this economy is booming by attracting jobs and investment here, which I do. And if I do all that, then I think people will say, good job, glad you're moving on, time to go, and I'll go off quite happily into the sunset.
Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. For the first time since the start of the pandemic, Scarborough Olympian Andre DeGrasse held his Youth Basketball Holiday Classic tournament. Teams from around the GTA have been competing at the Pan Am Centre for the past 2 days. And today, DeGrasse himself stopped by to spend some time with the kids. Our Greg Ross was there.
Duncan. In addition to shooting a few hoops, Andre DeGrasse took some time to shake hands and pose for pictures with the competitors in his basketball classic.
It's good to be back here and see all the kids again, and everyone enjoying the holidays and getting a chance to just come out here and have some fun.
While basketball has been the focus for the past 2 days, getting a chance to meet a hero was a welcome distraction for many of the kids here.
His story really inspires me. This is a guy that didn't even go run collegiately. They just found him running somewhere, and then he just got his shots.
It's pretty cool to know that, from where all of these kids and where I am, that there's someone that's going somewhere very far in sports and Olympics.
Some were lucky enough to get a pregame pep talk with the 6-time Olympic medalist.
Guys, just go out there, have some fun, enjoy the moment.
But that speech was only part of the inspiration these players took away from the moment.
He dabbed up my shooting hand.
What does that mean?
Now we have the magic touch.
And it's moments like this that the mayor says can change someone's life.
One day can make a difference in the lives of kids who sometimes just need that little extra boost to make themselves as great as they can be.
Like most events, the pandemic took a toll on this tournament. After a 3-year hiatus, only about a third of the teams returned to compete.
3 years ago, we had about 60 teams, and to be able to do something like this now, I think we have about 20 teams here today. So it's good to just come back and do something small, and then of course we kind of build back on it.
DeGrasse says the goal is to be back around 60 teams next year. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a live look at our city skyline, partly cloudy tonight, currently sitting at around 5 degrees. Dahlia's back now with our extended forecast, and you mentioned some mild days ahead. What should we consider for our New Year's outfits?
That's right, Talia. Speaking of that New Year's Eve outfit, I think a raincoat is going to be part of that fashion for that evening, and also an umbrella is going to be very well needed for the weekend. And yes, warmer temperatures ahead. We're going to see even on Friday, we're going to see double digits, which we'll get to in a bit. The daytime high today, 4 degrees, a little cooler out in Ottawa, and that's because of that snowstorm and that Arctic air that has been lingering. But overall, we're seeing that low pressure system still moving in across Ontario, which is what's going to bring us those rainy and damp conditions over the next few days. So if we take a look here, Thursday, tomorrow, going to be mainly cloudy starting off in the morning. It will really kick in, and for the most of the day, we're going to continue to see that cloud coverage, a little bit of drizzle throughout the day, and then starting Friday at around 1 p.m. we're really going to see that heavy rainfall, and that rain is going to be stretching over the weekend. So like I said, New Year's, that's when you're going to need your umbrella. And speaking of which, on Sunday at around 7 a.m. there might even be a mixture of rain and snow, but we're going to keep an eye on that over the next few days. And then around 4 p.m. it'll clear up, and then some more rain will be on the way for Sunday. Now we are also expecting windy days ahead as well. So tonight we're going to see winds gusting up to 47 kilometers an hour. It will get a little lighter, but then it will pick back up Thursday at around noon. And then over the next few days, we're going to have some windy days, but then it'll really get a little bit lighter over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday. So although we're going to have some rain over the weekend, it shouldn't be too windy on the weekend as well. Now tonight, temperatures will drop to 0 degrees, a little cooler out in Oshawa and Markham. And then over the next few days, like I said, all you see that rain, that's going to continue over the weekend. And then Monday, back to a dry spell indeed.
Thanks, Dahlia. The winter storm from last week may have changed your Christmas plans, but for some people living in Crystal Beach and Fort Erie, their homes ended up looking a little more festive than they probably planned. Take a look at this. Homes covered in thick layers of ice. The strong winds caused water from the lake to splash against the homes, and those negative temperatures froze the water on contact, coating homes in more than 30 centimeters of thick ice. And finally tonight, an 11-year-old girl from Stouffville, Ontario is impressing runners after beating adults in 5-kilometer races. Our video producer Laura Peterson caught up with this fast little girl.
Recently, I ran the Niagara Falls 5K, and I ran it in 1855, and I won the whole race for women.
You beat absolutely every other woman.
Yes. At the start of COVID in 2020, I started running with my dad to stay in shape for soccer. I actually was never expecting to join a track team or do any races. I was just expecting to go for runs, and that's it.
Everything had just locked down. For soccer, her coach at the time had sent a message saying, you know, the kids should stay active. So I used to be a runner. I thought, okay, we should get her running. We started with short distances. You know, we started with 1K and then I went to 2K. And in the beginning, I was going with her. Now I strictly just ride my bike with her because I just can't keep up. She's an incredible athlete. And for someone who's so small, she's usually the smallest athlete in any race or soccer match. She's just learned that she has to fight, and the results speak for themselves.
Come on, Sawyer! Yes! I think people are really surprised, especially because of my height. Like this one guy, when we were getting my bid, he was like, oh yeah, you probably have a chance to win your age group, and he didn't think I could win the whole thing.
Stay in that pack, stay in that pack!
I love making it on the podium and like winning medals and dropping my times, and I also like how everyone is so supportive and kind. This one I really like because I got it when I was at the Ontario Summer Games. I kind of just like stay positive. Even if I'm not the best, I just keep thinking that so that I keep like believing that I can do something so that maybe I could do it. And I just try and stay as focused as possible and in the right mindset.
So impressive. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.